one thing that you'll have to keep in mind when you're working with like responsive design and desktop and all of the other screen sizes that you're going to need is figuring out how many actually you're going to cover with your design. So in here, you're going to notice me work on two different sizes for desktop, just because I felt like covering one of them might leave developers with a couple of open questions. Depending on how many differences you have based on how everything is scaling, you might actually decide to have like 2 tablet sizes, 2 mobile sizes, 4 desktop sizes. When it comes to responsive, you just really need to be careful that everything is clear when it comes to scaling and how things are going to be placed on a different screen size. So in here you can see me ditching the menu icon with actual options for the menu and kind of trying out different sizes for this bar. I went with something really big, like 96 is not something that you're going to use a lot when you're working on desktop sizes, just because it's like almost 100 pixels and that's a lot of space. But when you're working on something so playful and so bubbly and fun like this website is, because that's the type of audience that you want to attract and that's the kind of feeling that you want to translate to your visitors, you might actually end up going with that, just because like bigger elements and more playful elements are all tying into the same message that we want to get across when we're working on this. One thing that you're going to notice me do differently when it comes to the desktop size is basically the header is going to have both the text and the photo in the same line. One of them is going to be on the left and the other one is going to be on the right. It's not something that we've done on tablet and mobile, just because the space and the device that we were using there isn't really practical when it comes to having text on the left side. It would be like 150 pixels of space left for the text, and that's never enough for all of the messages that you want to get across. Now in here, when it comes to alignment, I'm trying to keep the button on the left side, the start position of the text in here as well, and all of those things kind of neatly aligned together, and kind of double checking the spacing between elements, because again, you want to achieve that consistency, you want to achieve alignment in your design, even if it's kind of an invisible line. And that's how you should look at grids, like invisible lines helping you place elements on the screen to get to a point where you want to get to. So you can really see me kind of adjusting these elements a little bit, trying to figure out, like, do I want on desktop these elements to jump out of this frame as well? Do we want to add another element in here? It's definitely something that's doable, and you can easily cover that with design, as long as you're careful about how many new things you're introducing. And that's another thing, like if I was working desktop first, I might have had different ideas on like what to do with all of this and how I want to achieve similar effects and look and feel. But because I was working mobile first, I was limited with the amount of details. So that means that on desktop, I'm still going to have everything that I have on mobile, but I'm going to introduce a little bit more to ensure that the space and like the increase in space that we have on a desktop device is used up properly, and added a new benefit for actually viewing this website on a larger screen size. One thing that I'm doing in here is I'm positioning like a duplicate version of this photo, because just cropping things with a frame won't work this time. Because I do want to keep like this left part of the foot cropped, but I still want at least a part of the photo of the dog to kind of go outside of this frame, because that's again the message that I want to get across. It's not like we're not confined in rules. This website that we're working on is actually going to allow your pet to kind of experience everything and kind of be in borders, but still like not fully confined in something that you would see in some of the places where they would maybe like spend their whole day in like one by one areas or something. So yeah, in here, I'm trying to think of a way to adjust the desktop line height, because when I started using it, I've noticed that the line height was a little bit too big and the title seemed spaced out too much. So in here right now, you see me go back to the Doggy Daycare library, make an adjustment so that this font feels a little bit better. And I've now created a really solid header section for the desktop side. Again, if I wasn't working on this, I think that the adjustments that I did on the two desktop screens took me like half an hour, maybe a little bit more, somewhere in between 30 and 40 minutes. If I was like doing it to the point where I was like 100% happy with everything, it would probably take me a lot more, and it would be a really boring and a video where you're not learning anything from Figma perspective. You're just looking at me kind of like playing around with things until they feel right. But that's the design process. Like, don't be worried about hitting it right on the first try. It's fully okay to experiment. Once you notice something that's working, adjust your designs to accommodate for it, and see if you need to change your rules. Rules are in here to be broken. And again, as much as followed, they can still be broken if the situation that you are in requires it. In here, I remember that I actually have a button with an icon, so why not just use that since we have it in our design system. So I'm just kind of duplicating this and trying to create a really nice slider on the desktop. Now, you're gonna notice that on tablet and mobile screen sizes, we didn't have these arrows that go left and right. And that's because you're gonna be using those devices with your finger. While when you're using a desktop, screen, you don't have your most of the like computers and laptops are not actually fully adjusted or adjusted at all for touch. So just something to keep in mind, that you do need some kind of a different control because people are going to be using this with a mouse. Now in here, you're going to notice that I'm not actually going to make a duplicate of the header section in here, just because I don't feel like that's going to be the best use of space in here. I do want to adjust this visual that we have in here when it comes to the dog in this yellow background, but it's going to be a little bit different on desktop. And that's, again, okay to do. You don't have to resize everything so that it follows like exactly the same rules that you had on tablet, because in here we had this testimonials on the right side. They're using up like 7 columns if I'm not mistaken. So let's fill up the 4 with the visual that we have in here of this little celebratory dog who's having fun in this daycare. And yeah, again, I'm looking for like lines of alignment in here. You can see that this is aligning, and then this is going to be aligning with the arrows left and right that we have there. In here, I introduced another shape that adds a little bit more of a lighter part to this illustration, and you can see that everything is kind of neatly aligned now in the second section completely. When it comes to the section below about the pricing, you're gonna see me again adjust this to the context of use on desktop. So in here we had like 2 columns on tablet, we had just 1 column on mobile, while in here we're actually gonna switch this into something that's gonna work better with the width and amount of space that we have available in here. So I'm just dragging elements outside, and I'm ensuring that they're actually hugging the contents in here, and I'm trying to figure out what is the kind of the ideal spacing that I need to have to ensure that these are kind of cards. So ideally what I wanted to do is have all of these cards fit into the 2 columns or 3 columns of this grid, and I did it in here. Again, when you're using something like the iOS adjustment to the radius, do discuss that with your developer. It might not be doable immediately, but in here you see me now creating 3 different cards that are spaced out based on the grid, and I'm just going to duplicate those and copy the data from the table that we have in here. Again, not really happy with how the shadows are looking, so either I'm going to remove them or I'm going to adjust them so that they feel better with the space in here, copying some prices, copying some of these labels, and trying to recreate the table in a more card-like way so that it works better for this. And this new screen size that we have in here. And yeah, I'm gonna make this one green, and that's gonna make it pop off a little bit more. And finally, trying to see if I need a shadow or if I don't need a shadow. And what I'm gonna do in here is not use the style, but just the color of the shadow is gonna be a little bit different because it's just gonna make more sense. Like, do I want to keep it ordered like this? Most likely yes, because of the fact that it's gonna be a responsive design, so the order of elements is sometimes crucial. But I can introduce a decorative element like that we already use in the header to ensure that something like this pricing option stands out even more. Now I'm going to move on to this section, and as I've said in the tablet video, this is probably the section that I'm least happy with. Just because I feel like it looks a little bit out of place, but honestly, it would probably take me a couple more attempts to get it to a point where I'm 100% happy with it. And honestly, in your design process, it's better to first show it to your client to see their thoughts on it, and then to actually test it with the users to hear their opinions on it before just kind of making 70 different versions of the same thing. So I kept it like this for now because it's the probably least important section on this entire website. So why stress so much on it? And again, sharing some thoughts that I had in mind when I was working on this is those decisions, like, is this something worth spending another hour on if everything else looks like it's almost there? And that's going to kind of help you decide what kind of a designer are you. Ideally, yes, if this is a project that's going to be developed really soon, you would spend a little bit more time exploring all of these things. But again, this is not like a full-on UI course. One thing that I'm going to do in here is duplicate this element and put it on the left and right side, so it kind of introduces a little bit more balance in here. And I do want to ensure that still the most important element in here is checking the availability and making that form work well with everything else that we have in here. Now, when it comes to the footer, which was problematic for us on the tablet size, because we solved a lot of these problems, it's not going to be a problematic element for us on the desktop side. You can see me use matte in here in these input fields, and yeah, I think that this is a pretty good desktop size. Now we just need to adjust everything that we've done for the desktop large size as well. Again, if I went back and kind of redid a couple of these elements so that they scale a little bit better, it would take me even less time. But since this is a landing page, it's not something that you're going to be redoing hundreds of times. That's probably the most important skill that you need to build, is like learning where it makes sense to work with auto layout and components and everything, and where it does not make sense to do that. So hopefully this course is teaching you a couple of these things as I'm adjusting some of these elements. In here, you're gonna see me crop this and kind of make it fit in with everything that we need to do with this element. Again, going in here, just kind of stretching things around. You can see that now it fell into 2 lines. I'm double checking the spacing on the side, and maybe now it's the best idea to kind of just align this vertically so that it falls into place nicely. And yeah, looks like a really good header section for a really, really wide desktop. And let's do a couple of these other tweaks to ensure that this doggo looks really good on this new size. Now, one thing that I had problems with in here was the fact that it seemed like this circle was going right straight into the paw in here. So that's why I'm making some of these adjustments where I'm kind of placing elements a little bit further into the inner side of this element that we have in here, just because like it felt a little bit weird since this was going straight into the paw in here. Again, double checking the width of the columns that I'm using on the desktop size, because on the white desktop, is there really a reason for me to kind of make this entire section use up more or less columns if I can make it still use, I think it was 7 here and 4 in here. So I'm just kind of stretching this a little bit and kind of pushing some elements in and out. And I've noticed that this one is not showing its kind of, not sure how to call this, but basically like a whistle in a sense when you're celebrating. So like, how do I make that work in here? Let's just make this element go outside of this frame. Adjustment was done. Let's scale a couple of these other elements as well to ensure that this is still looking visually pleasing. Again, some of these things are subjective, some of them are very objective, so it's a balancing act that you need to learn how to use as a designer. Now, one thing that I did in here is there's really no need for these to go into so many different columns. So I'm gonna actually make them kind of work in, like, the entire width of this element is gonna be the width of the container that I'm using. And then to ensure that this works well, I'm actually gonna place all of them into an auto layout to make them scale as I would expect them to scale. And in here, I removed the popular tag because it felt like it's really obvious that this is the one that's a little bit different than all of the other ones. So is there a need for me to add the most popular tag? And in here, you saw me switch this to fill container, and I made the spacing between them a little bit smaller because of the problem I had in here where this one is going straight to the edge. And that's another thing that you're going to be doing as a designer. It doesn't mean that these 6 elements in here need to follow the grid. As I've said, like, the hard grid ensures that all of these 6 cards that we have on the top fall into place, but the spacing between them doesn't have to be the gather spacing. It just means that you can introduce a different gather spacing into this element if you're designing and kind of planning things around that. We needed smaller gathers on this one section, so I had smaller gathers on that section. And here you can see me spacing things evenly, trying to position this section. Again, like, this section I'm honestly the least happy with, but hopefully it's still good enough. Just because I feel like maybe this gradient that I decided to introduce is actually kind of out of brand with everything else that I'm doing. But you can see that now even adjusting it to a really, really large desktop took me just like a couple of minutes and just some double checking of spacings to ensure that everything is positioned correctly, and that's it. That's all of the work that you need to do to kind of create a really simple landing page that covers everything that you personally need to know about Figma and how to apply it when you're working in the context of a responsive website. Let's now switch to the mobile app.